Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here, as always, to help you get straight to the core ideas from the sources you send us. And today, we're digging into some pretty, unconventional thinking about money, wealth, and financial education.
That's right. And the sources we're diving into today were provided by you, our listener. Specifically, we've got excerpts from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and also Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yeah, quite influential books for many. So our mission here is to really unpack the key differences in thinking that these sources present. We want to pull out the main takeaways and maybe find some surprising insights for you about building financial freedom.
Think of it as us helping you explore your source material, getting you better informed on these specific perspectives.
Okay, so let's jump in. The whole foundation of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the author's experience with two father figures, right?
Exactly. There was his biological father, who he calls Poor Dad. Very educated, PhD, government job, but financially always seemed to be, struggling or stressed.
And then there was his best friend's dad, Rich Dad. Not the same level of formal education, I believe, but a really successful businessman. Became quite wealthy.
And the advice they gave about money, chalk and cheese.
Yeah.
Totally different. Poor Dad's mantra was basically, go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job, work hard for your money, play it safe.
The traditional path, yeah. But Rich Dad?
Rich Dad's view was almost the opposite. It wasn't about working for money. It was about making money work for you. His focus was learning how money actually works, understanding risk, learning to manage it, not avoid it, and building assets.
That's a fundamental shift in perspective.
Huge. And you see it in the little things the source mentions. Like, Poor Dad would often say, I can't afford it.
Right, and the book argues that statement just shuts down your thinking. It's an endpoint.
Precisely. Whereas Rich Dad would ask, okay, how can I afford it?
Yeah.
That question forces your brain to look for solutions, to get creative. It opens things up.
Interesting. And it wasn't just about affording things, was it? Even talking about money was different.
Oh, completely. Poor Dad thought talking about money at the dinner table was, maybe impolite. Or just not done.
While Rich Dad actively encouraged it, saw it as part of essential education. Business, investing, finances, all fair game.
And that risk thing. Poor Dad's advice was crystal clear. Don't take risks with money.
Which sounds sensible to a lot of people, I imagine.
Sure. But Rich Dad's take was learn to manage risk. He saw it as essential. You can't get ahead without taking some calculated risks, but you need to know what you're doing.
Okay, here's one that probably trips people up. The house. Poor Dad saw his home as his biggest asset, his main investment.
Yeah, the standard view. But Rich Dad, he apparently called his own house a liability. And he believed if your house is your biggest investment, you're actually in trouble.
Wow, okay, a liability. That definitely goes against the grain. How does the source make that distinction clear? What is the difference?
This is maybe the core concept in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the difference between an asset and a liability. The source claims most people just don't get this. Not really.
So what's the simple definition it gives?
Super simple. An asset puts money in your pocket.
Okay, money in.
A liability takes money out of your pocket.
Money out. Got it. Seems straightforward enough.
It seems simple, but the source stresses that truly understanding it means you need some financial literacy. You need to be able to, read the numbers on a financial statement and see where the cash is actually flowing.
Right, because just calling something an asset doesn't mean it functions like one for you personally. It depends on the cash flow.
Exactly. The book uses these little diagrams. For the poor and middle class, the pattern is income comes in, usually from a job, and then it flows right back out. Expenses like taxes, rent or mortgage, food, car payments, credit cards, liabilities eat it up.
And the house payment, property taxes, insurance, upkeep, that's money flowing out every month. So in that pattern, it acts like a liability.
That's the argument. Now contrast that with the pattern the source shows for the rich. Their income primarily flows in from their assets.
Like what kinds of assets?
Things like rental income from real estate, dividends from stocks, maybe royalties from intellectual property, business profits, stuff that generates cash flow without them necessarily working for it directly in that moment.
Okay, so the income comes from assets.
Right. And that income covers their expenses, and crucially, whatever's left over gets reinvested back into buying more assets.
So the assets buy more assets. It's a cycle.
A positive feedback loop. The asset column grows, generating more income, which buys more assets, and so on. That's how wealth is built, according to the source.
Which leads to this idea of the rat race, right? That pattern the source describes for most people.
Yeah. Get up, go to work, earn money, pay bills, repeat. maybe get a raise, but then expenses creep up too. You're running faster but staying in the same place, financially speaking.
And the sources, this is driven by two key emotions.
Fear and greed, essentially. Fear of not having enough money, fear of bills, fear of losing the job, and then desire or greed, wanting the nicer car, the bigger house, the stuff money can buy. These emotions, the source argues, often cause people to react rather than think clearly about money.
And this ties back into the education system, according to the source.
Big time. The argument is that schools are designed to teach you how to be a good employee or maybe a specialist, like a doctor or lawyer. They teach scholastic skills and professional skills.
But not financial skills, not how money works.
Exactly. Nothing about investing, assets versus liabilities, cash flow management. So you can have incredibly smart, highly paid professionals who are still, financially illiterate in practice and struggle with money management their whole lives. They're great at earning it, maybe, but not at keeping or growing it.
And where do most people learn about money then, if not school?
From their parents, mostly. Which means if your parents weren't financially savvy, you likely inherit their mindset and habits, their financial programming. It just perpetuates.
And the source expresses some concern about the future implications of this lack of financial education.
Yeah, with things like Social Security and pensions under pressure. The source worries that without financial self-reliance, more people might end up dependent on family or government, which might not be sustainable.
So if school doesn't teach it, and parents might not know it, how do you gain power over money? The source talks about financial intelligence or financial IQ.
Right. It's not just about earning more money. It's about getting smarter about money. And financial IQ, as the source presents it, isn't just one thing. It's like a synergy of 4 key technical skills.
Okay, what are those for?
According to the source. Number 1 is accounting or financial literacy. Basically, the ability to read numbers, understand financial statements is the language.
Makes sense.
Number 2 is investing, the science of money making money, but viewed specifically through the lens of creating or acquiring assets that generate income. 3 is understanding markets, supply and demand, economic fundamentals, recognizing trends, and, crucially, spotting opportunities that others might miss because they don't understand the market dynamics.
And the fourth?
The law. This one's interesting. It's about understanding the rules of the game, corporate structures, regulations, and especially tax advantages. Knowing how the legal system impacts financial strategy.
So it's not just math and markets, but also the legal structures. That's key.
Absolutely. The source argues that when you combine these 4 skills, your overall financial intelligence gets amplified. You can see possibilities, structure deals, and protect your wealth in ways that someone focused only on, say, earning a salary just can't.
This ties into the other source we looked at, Rich Dad's cash flow quadrant. It gives a framework for understanding different ways people earn income, doesn't it?
Yeah, the cash flow quadrant. It divides income generation into 4 categories represented by letters E, S, B, and I.
E is for employee.
Right. You have a job, you work for someone else or a company. S is for self-employed or a small business owner.
Yeah.
You own your job, essentially. Think doctors, lawyers in solo practice, consultants, shop owners. You work for yourself.
Okay, so E and S are on the left side of this quadrant. What about the right side?
That's where you find B for big business owner. These people own a system and have people working for them in that system. Think founders of large companies. And S is for investor. Here, your money works for you. You invest in other people's businesses, real estate, stocks, bonds. Assets generate your income.
And the source's point is that our traditional education system mostly prepares us for the left side, the E and S quadrants.
Overwhelmingly, yes. It trains people to be good employees or skilled self-employed professionals, but not necessarily how to build a B quadrant business system or become an I quadrant investor.
And the type of income you earn differs across these quadrants too, right?
Definitely. The source highlights 3 main types. First is ordinary earned income. That's typically what you get in the E and S quadrants. Your salary, your professional fees, and importantly, this is usually the most heavily taxed income.
Okay, earned income. What else?
Then there's passive income. This comes from assets you own that generate income without you having to actively work for it day to day. Think rental income from properties, royalties from a book or patent.
Right. And the third?
Portfolio income. This is income from paper assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, dividends, interest, capital gains.
So putting it together, the core strategy that emerges from these sources seems to be converting that highly taxed earned income from the E or S side into passive and portfolio income on the B or I side.
That's the essence of it. Build up your asset column so it generates passive and portfolio income, which is often taxed more favorably and doesn't rely solely on your own labor. That's the path to financial freedom presented in the source.
But if the concepts are there, why do people stay stuck in that rat race we talked about? What holds them back, according to the source?
Again, it comes back strongly to those emotions. Fear and desire or greed, the fear of losing money, the fear of not being able to pay bills, the fear of stepping outside the perceived security of a job.
Keeps people playing it safe, maybe too safe.
Exactly. And then there's the desire for more your paycheck. The bigger paycheck often leaves a bigger spending, more liabilities, locking you further into the cycle. People react emotionally to money, the source says, instead of using their heads.
It gives that example of Mrs. Martin, right? Working diligently, but afraid to ask for a raise or look elsewhere because she's terrified of losing the little security she has.
Yeah, a perfect illustration of how fear can paralyze you, keep you trapped. The source calls it self-inflicted fear and ignorance. Ignorance about how money really works fuels the fear.
So escaping isn't just about learning the how-to, it's also about tackling these internal emotional drivers, developing financial intelligence and confronting the fear and desire.
That seems to be a major point. You need both the knowledge and the emotional fortitude.
Now, one of the more controversial parts of the source material deals with taxes and corporations. How does it frame that?
Well, it presents a particular historical perspective, arguing that attempts to tax the rich often ended up hitting the middle class harder because the wealthy found ways to adapt. And a key way they adapted, according to the source, is through the use of corporations.
Okay, so the claim is that corporations offer advantages. How so?
Several ways, according to the source. First, risk limitation. It uses the analogy of old sailing ships. Investors would form a corporation for a single voyage. If the ship sank, their loss was limited to their investment in that voyage, protecting their other assets. Corporations create a legal shield.
Makes sense. What else?
A big one is how expenses are handled relative to taxes. An employee earns money, pays income tax on it, and then spends what's left.
Right, that's the usual pattern.
But a corporation, the source claims, earns money, then spends money on legitimate business expenses first, and then pays corporate income tax on whatever profit remains. The timing and definition of expenses are different.
And the source gives examples of what might count as these pre-tax corporate expenses.
Yeah, it mentions things like portions of home office costs, car expenses, insurance, travel for business purposes, even things like vacation structure as board meetings or business meals, all within legal limits, of course, but things an employee typically pays for with after-tax dollars.
It also mentions specific tax advantages for certain assets, like the 1031 exchange.
Correct. That's a specific IRS code for real estate investors, allowing them to defer capital gains taxes when they sell one property and reinvest the proceeds into another similar property. It helps keep capital working and growing without an immediate tax hit.
So the source isn't necessarily saying these things are loopholes only for the super rich, but rather legal tools available to those who structure their affairs correctly, often through a corporation, and who are focused on building assets, minding their own business, as the source puts it.
That seems to be the perspective presented, yes. It's about understanding and using the rules of the financial game as they exist.
Okay, moving beyond just using structures, the source puts forward an even bolder idea that the rich sometimes invent money. What does that mean?
It means they see or create opportunities that other people just don't recognize. It's not just finding existing assets, it's about creating value or recognizing potential where others see nothing.
It uses that Alexander Graham Bell story, right?
Yeah.
Offering his telephone patent to Western Union for $100,000.
Yeah, and they turned him down, dismissed it as a toy. They couldn't see the massive potential, the opportunity right in front of them. The source uses this to illustrate how lack of vision or financial intelligence can cause people to miss huge opportunities.
So it takes more than just technical skill. It requires a certain mindset, maybe courage.
Financial intelligence plus courage, the source says. Training your mind to see what others miss. It tells another story about a friend looking at a rundown house.
Oh yeah, the one with the extra lots.
Exactly. Everyone else saw a worthless building. But he checked the title and found it came with 4 extra valuable lots attached. He saw the hidden asset, the land, because he looked beyond the obvious.
So this leads to the idea that serious investors need skills beyond just, say, buying stocks or mutual funds.
Definitely. The source lists 3 key skills for sophisticated investors. 1, finding opportunities others miss. 2, Knowing how to raise money, not just relying on banks, but finding private investors, structuring deals creatively. And 3, organizing smart people, hiring experts who know more than you do in specific areas.
And it gives examples like putting a property under contract with little or no money down initially.
Right, tying it up, as the source describes it. Control the asset, then find the money or partners. It's about creating opportunities and leveraging resources.
Of course, it's not all external strategies. The source talks a lot about internal obstacles too, right? The things inside us that hold us back.
Oh yeah, big time. Fear of loss is a huge one. Fear of making a mistake, fear of failing. But the source really reframes failure. It argues that failure is essential for learning. Like learning to ride a bike, you fall off.
It says winners are inspired by failure while losers are defeated by it. Uses examples like Edison or even historical battles like the Alamo leading to eventual victory.
Exactly. Failure is just feedback, part of the process. Another obstacle is what it calls the Chicken Little syndrome.
The sky is falling.
Right. Constant worry, doubt, pessimism, seeing risk everywhere, even in potential opportunities. This fear just paralyzes people, prevents them from taking any action at all.
Like worrying about gas prices going up instead of seeing it as a sign maybe related to oil stock opportunities, or thinking something like tax lien certificates, which the source mentions, are too risky without actually understanding them.
Precisely. Then there's laziness. Not necessarily sitting around doing nothing, but maybe being too busy with unimportant things to focus on building wealth. The source controversially suggests that sometimes a little greed wanting a better life is actually necessary to overcome laziness and inertia, asking, what's in it for me? Or WIIFM.
Interesting take. What else?
Arrogance. People who think they know it all, they argue instead of listen. They dismiss new ideas because it contradicts what they think they know. The source has that great line, what you know is your greatest asset, what you don't know is your greatest risk. And arrogance closes you off to learning. It equals ignorance in practice.
And also the difficulty of going against the crowd. Herd mentality.
Yeah, especially investing. It's hard to buy when everyone else is selling when things are on sale, or sell when everyone's euphoric. Wise investing often means being contrarian, which is psychologically difficult.
Okay, so given all that, what are some of the positive, actionable steps or mindsets the source suggests for developing your financial genius?
Well, a big one is finding a reason why that's bigger than the obstacles. A strong purpose, a dream that pulls you forward. The power of spirit, the source calls it.
And the power of choice.
Huge. Consciously choosing every day how you spend your time, what you do with your money, even small amounts, and critically, what you choose to learn. Investing in your financial education.
So continuous learning is key. Actively seeking out knowledge in faster ways or formulas, as the source puts it, to build wealth, not just relying on the slow grind, like taking a course on foreclosures or real estate syndication.
Absolutely. And then action. The source hammers this home. Knowledge is potential power, but action is real power. You have to do something. Start small, but start.
One specific action emphasized is pay yourself first. What does that look like according to the source?
It's a discipline. Before you pay your bills, before you pay the tax man, especially if using a corporation, you allocate money to your asset column. You invest first.
But what if you're short for bills then?
That's the kicker. The source suggests you shouldn't dip into your savings or investments to cover the shortfall. Instead, let the pressure motivate you. Use that pressure to force yourself to find new ways to generate more income to cover the bills. Don't raid your assets.
Use the pressure creatively. That's a different way to think about it.
Definitely. Another piece of advice, pay your advisors well. Good accountants, attorneys, brokers, their expertise should make you far more money than they cost you. But choose wisely, find professionals who are also actively building their own asset columns who understand the game.
Like the accountant whose real business was real estate investing.
Exactly. They get it. Then there's this concept the source calls being an Indian giver with investments. Sounds provocative. What's the idea?
It's about focusing intensely on getting your initial investment capital back out of a deal as quickly as possible, the return on investment. Once your original money is back in your pocket, the asset itself or any ongoing cash flow from it is essentially free. You got your seed money back, and now you have an asset working for you for potentially zero risk on your original capital. Okay, ROI is key. Get your capital back. The source uses Ray Kroc and McDonald's as an example, right? He made his real fortune from the land under the franchises, not just the burgers.
Right. He got a piece of the action that kept generating wealth long after the initial setup. Other points include giving the idea that if you want something, money, knowledge contacts, find ways to give it first.
Yeah.
Reciprocity.
And teaching other.
A powerful way to learn yourself. When you teach something, you solidify your own understanding and often uncover gaps or new insights.
The source also pushes for actively looking for deals, right? Not waiting for them to fall in your lap.
Yeah, constantly shopping. Jogging different neighborhoods to spot undervalued properties, looking for bargains in the stock market during downturns, searching foreclosure lists, being proactive, thinking big, looking for ways to scale, pool resources, learning from history. And interestingly, not diversifying too much when you're starting small. Focus is key initially.
So putting this all together, the sources seem to frame this whole quest for financial freedom as much more than just making money.
Oh, definitely. The cash flow quadrant source explicitly talks about it as a journey involving mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual development. Moving quadrants isn't just changing jobs, it's changing your core being, your mindset.
And it highlights things like the cash flow board game, not just as fun, but as a tool for experiential learning.
Yeah, because it lets you simulate investing, make mistakes, see cash flow patterns, and deal with the emotions of winning and losing all in a safe, low-risk environment. The source suggests this kind of simulation helps build that emotional and even spiritual muscle needed for real-world financial success.
It even draws a parallel between financial struggles and things like addiction smoking, overeating, suggesting they can stem from trying to fill an internal, maybe spiritual void with external things. Changing your finances might require addressing deeper issues.
It's a holistic view.
Hmm.
There's that anecdote about the friend who gave his son $3,000, not just to spend, but specifically to invest in the stock market. The son lost some, learned a ton. The source frames that experience as far more valuable than just giving him the cash or paying for a semester of college. It was real-world financial education, warts and all.
So bringing it all back for you, our listener who shared these sources, the fundamental contrast here is stark. Working hard for money versus learning to have money work for you. And the path, according to these sources, lies in continuous financial education and actively minding your own business, building that asset column.
And maybe the final provocative thought the source leaves us with is this. The common saying, "it takes money to make money," is presented as, well, the belief of those who haven't developed their financial intelligence. Money, the source insists, is ultimately just an idea.
An idea that can start small.
Exactly. It starts in your head, and with the right thinking, the right knowledge, and crucially taking action, it can grow into something substantial.
So reflecting on everything we've unpacked from your source material, what's one small idea, one small action maybe, that you could take today to begin or accelerate your own financial journey no matter where you're starting from right now? Something to think about.
Thank you for listening. If you found value in this audio, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful content on motivation, habits, and wealth building. New audiobooks and summaries are uploaded every week, so stay tuned and keep growing. This is Neural Wealth, where your mindset meets your future. Until next time, stay focused, stay hungry, and stay inspired.